Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today, I'm going to be explaining why superstar edge rusher TJ Watt is still the NFL's most impactful defensive player, even without an elite pressure rate. And make sure you guys stick around, because if you guys are wondering why the Steelers haven't signed a safety before the start of training camp this year and after the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade, I have the answer for you later in today's show. But before we get into the content today, what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. Is TJ Watt the NFL's most valuable defensive player right now? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section to kick off today's show. And let's get into TJ Watt here, because a pair of popular NFL YouTubers have caught some heat lately on Steelers Twitter for some recent comments kind of pointing out TJ Watt's kind of pedestrian, let's call it, pressure rate numbers and pass rush win rate numbers to make the case that he isn't as elite of an NFL pass rusher as other top guys like Micah Parsons, like Myles Garrett, like Trey Hendrickson, and others. We'll start with Brett Coleman here, who's a very large NFL YouTuber. I have a lot of respect for Brett, but this is what he had to say on his X account over the last several days. Last 3 seasons combined among edges with at least 300 pass rush snaps on true dropbacks. There's 96 of them. TJ Watt is 53rd among those edges in pressure rate and 37th in win rate. Hendrickson is 5th and 8th, respectively. And then Marcus Whitman, otherwise known as That Franchise Guy on YouTube. Marcus does really great work. I highly recommend his channel, by the way. But this is what he had to say about TJ Watt on his deep dive on the Pittsburgh Steelers. TJ Watt wasn't his good old self before his injury last season. Weeks 1 through 14, before that ankle injury that everyone wants to point to, he was 46th in the NFL in pass rush win rate. He was 24th in pressures. So first, I do want to say I have a ton of respect for both of these guys. I think they do really good work, and I do recommend that you go subscribe to their channels as well, because they put out some really good content. But I think that if we're going to look at TJ Watt and you're going to look at his profile and the numbers that he has put up, just objectively speaking, over the last year or 2 years or so, Watt is not the most disruptive pass rusher in the National Football League, or at least he's not anymore. When he was putting up, 20-plus sacks per season, you could certainly make that argument. But nowadays, he is not the most disruptive pass rusher in terms of getting those quick pressures, being the first person to break through the initial protection. He's usually the one that's actually cleaning up after other people's pressures, namely Alex Highsmith's. Highsmith's pressure rate has been higher than Watt's for a couple years now, and he's kind of their disruptor, so to speak. He is the disruptor role in this defense and in this pass rush. Nick Herbig is also a disruptor type with a higher win rate and a higher pressure rate than TJ Watt. But despite that, TJ is still the most impactful defender in the NFL, in my opinion. Now, you might be saying at home, but Jack, if TJ Watt isn't racking up the pressure numbers and he's not racking up the pressure rate like Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig are, how can he be more impactful as a pass rusher and as an edge defender? Well, the thing that I think that goes really underrated, and something that is a big-time underrated gift that TJ Watt has, and he's always had this even when he was more productive in terms of his pressure numbers, was that he's a really good, quote-unquote, second-wave pass rusher. So he's got this great instinct where if the quarterback gets taken off their spot by an initial pressure by, say, Alex Highsmith, TJ has a really good instinct to understand kind of where the pressure is coming from, where the quarterback is likely to step up into, and TJ is always there to meet the quarterback, which is why TJ consistently gets these quote-unquote clean-up sacks. But I think that these clean-up sacks kind of get brushed to the side because he's not creating the initial pressure, but he is the one that is cleaning up, and he is the one that's finding the quarterback and bringing him to the ground eventually. And also part of the reason why TJ Watt doesn't have like truly elite disruptive numbers is because he does get more attention than the other members of the Steelers defensive line. Cam Hayward and Alex Highsmith and other guys on this defensive line benefit from one-on-one matchups because TJ Watt is getting so many chips and double teams. Now, Watt isn't as good as, say, Myles Garrett or Micah Parsons or even Trey Hendrickson at taking on double teams still, but part of the reason why this defense is able to be as good as it is with TJ Watt on the field is because of Watt's impact creating one-on-one opportunities for the rest of this pass rush then another thing that I want you to keep in mind here, and another reason why TJ Watt, I believe, is still the most impactful defender in the National Football League is because he is still an elite run defender, and I would argue he is still the best run defending edge rusher in the National Football League. And there's more ways to have production as an edge rusher than just sacks and pressures, guys. You can really affect the run game as well and bring people down behind the line of scrimmage, particularly on early downs as a run defender. And in that category, TJ Watt is leading the pack in the National Football League over the last several years. Watt leads the NFL in TFLs since he entered the league back in 2017. He has led the league in TFLs since his last contract back in 2021. And he also has led the NFL in TFLs before his ankle injury just last year with 18 of them in just 14 games before that ankle injury in Week 15 versus the Philadelphia Eagles. But that's not even TJ Watt's biggest value that he brings to the table. What makes TJ Watt truly special and why I believe he is the most impactful defender on the planet today is because of his turnover production, okay? His ability to have that peanut punch, that forced fumble ability. There's nobody in the National Football League that has been able to match TJ Watt's production in this area. And since 2021, guys, Watt has 16 forced fumbles. That is by far the most in the National Football League over that span. And guys, the reason why this makes him the most impactful and valuable defensive player in the National Football League, in my opinion, is because a turnover is the most impactful play a defender can make. All right, sack production is great, TFL production is great, but most of the times those plays don't result in a change of possession, whereas a turnover always does, and those turnover plays are just massive for the swing of a football game, momentum, all of that different stuff, and nobody has been better at that since he entered the league, and honestly since COVID 2020, since TJ Watt. So you take a look at everything that Watt brings to the table here in totality, not just his pressure rate, not just his pass rush win rate, which admittedly isn't the best in the league, but he does elevate his teammates because he gets so much attention from opposing offenses. The sack production is still there, and he's one of the best, if not the best, cleanup sack artist in the National Football League. He's still an elite run defender, as we discussed, and gets that TFL production, but then he also has that game-changing turnover production that, in my opinion, makes him a perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidate in this league, and we have seen that over the last several years. And I will say, a lot of people forget, guys, that Watt was the runaway favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year just last season before that ankle injury really hampered his ability to turn the corner, drive, all the different things that ankle injury really hindered Watt's ability to do. Last year, heading into Week 15, that Philadelphia Eagles game, TJ Watt was favored to win Defensive Player of the Year by quite a bit. He had minus 220 odds to win the award. The person that came in second in odds at that point in time during the season was the guy that ended up winning the award, Patrick Surtain, who had plus 900 odds. All right, so that is a big gap there between number one and number two. And the reason why Watt was leading in the Defensive Player of the Year discussion at that point in the year when he was healthy was because of all the production that he had that we talk about, right? 6 forced fumbles in just 14 games at that point. That easily led the National Football League. 18 TFLs, 11 and a half sacks, and 3 PBUs as well. That's another thing that people forget about Watt, is that he's an outside linebacker that can go out in pass coverage as well, and he's one of the most versatile pass rushers in the National Football League because of that. So TJ Watt brings everything to the table here. And I think that a true test of a player's impact on a defense and how valuable a player is to a team is you take him away. And we have seen, when the Steelers take away TJ Watt and he is not on the field, it is not a pretty sight for the black and gold. We have shown these numbers a number of times all throughout this offseason, but you guys can see here, it is pretty much a 14-point swing when TJ Watt is on the field versus off of it. The team's win percentage goes from they win about 2/3 of their games with him on the field to less than 10% with him off the field. The sack production goes goes down significantly. The turnover production goes down significantly. And if you think this is just because of the production Watt had early in his career, just last year, before the injury versus after the injury, it was a 20-point swing for the team after the injury versus before. Once again, you go from winning 2/3 of your games to not winning a single game after the injury. TJ Watt is still the most impactful and valuable defensive player in the National Football League. So no matter what you see out there about his pressure rate or his pass rush win rate, this guy is still that dude, and he is still among the league's elite defenders. Even if you say he's not the best or if he's not the most elite and he's not number one, you have to at least say he is in that elite tier, in my opinion, because I think the numbers bear that out. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Over or under 11.5 sacks for TJ Watt this season? Remember, the last time he had a contract dispute, he came in and had the best season of his career and won his lone Defensive Player of the Year trophy in his career. Do you think he gets more than his number last year of 11.5 sacks, or do you think he gets under? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds, and when that happens, take advantage of that time. But let me know if you think Watt's going to get over or under 11.5 sacks. So yesterday, fan favorite free agency target Julian Blackmon, a safety, signed with the New Orleans Saints after the Honey Badger Tyrann Mathieu announced his retirement from football. The Saints needed a safety, so they brought in Blackmon. And listen, man, there's a lot of hoopla, and there's a lot of people that are not very happy with the Steelers because they wanted them to add a safety after trading away Minkah Fitzpatrick. And listen, man, I wouldn't have minded adding Julian Blackmon. I think he's a fine player. I think he's solid. I think he would have been good competition for Juan Thornhill to compete for that starting free safety job here in Pittsburgh. But I'm honestly not too upset Pittsburgh passed on him, and I think people are over-exaggerating the impact he would have had here in Pittsburgh if the Steelers would have signed him. I mean, just ask yourself the question here. Why is it that the Indianapolis Colts, let him go in free agency this year, and then, they could have got him back for a much cheaper contract than they ended up giving to Cameron Bynum in free agency. They overpaid, in my opinion, $15 million per season for Cameron frickin' Bynum when he could have had Julian Blackmon back for much, much less than that. Also, the Pittsburgh Steelers had every opportunity all throughout the offseason to bring him in. Instead, they brought in Juan Thornhill in free agency, and then even after the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade, they decided not to bring him in. I think Pittsburgh has a reason for that. And then also New Orleans needed somebody to come in and play safety. That's the only reason why Blackmon even got a call from them. If Tyrann Mathieu doesn't retire, Julian Blackmon is still probably a free agent. So honestly, guys, I think Julian Blackmon and Juan Thornhill are actually very similar players. They're pretty much the same exact size, right? They're around 6 foot, 205 pounds. They're both good athletes. Thornhill actually ran a faster 40-yard dash time than Blackmon when they were coming out, but they're, very similar type of players where they're just okay starting safeties, and I don't think that Blackmon would have moved the needle at this position as a lot of Steelers fans think that he might have. Now, Blackmon, doesn't have the same injury issues as Thornhill does, and he is a little bit younger, so I do think Blackmon is slightly the better player heading into the year, but you take a look at their last healthy seasons, all right? Thornhill has not been healthy the last 2 years, guys. People forget about this. He had multiple calf strains the last 2 years in Cleveland. The last time that these two guys were healthy, I mean, their numbers are extremely similar, and you could definitely make an argument here that Thornhill's season in 2022 with the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs was better than what Blackmon did with the Indianapolis Colts last year. So if Thornhill can stay healthy, I think you're getting a pretty similar level of player to what the Steelers would have got out of Julian Blackmon this season. But I do think it is a fair question out there to ask, will the Pittsburgh Steelers add another safety? Obviously, you let go of Minkah Fitzpatrick. Obviously, Juan Thornhill does have those injury concerns, and there's not a lot of depth in the safety room right now. Thornhill is expected to be your starting nickel-free safety this year. Deshaun Elliott is expected to be your starting strong safety. And then Jalen Ramsey's going to rotate in their base formations as their box safety as well. But after that, you got a UDFA, Sebastian Castro. He's got to prove himself. Myles Killebrew is more of a true special team ace. And then Quindle Johnson, I don't really have a high-level belief in him either. So I do think that it is a fair concern here about Juan Thornhill because he hasn't been able to stay healthy the last 2 seasons. And then when he has been on the field playing through some of that calf tightness, he his film has not been great in his time in Cleveland, and it hasn't been good since 2022 when he did win that Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs. So the question that is on Steelers fans' minds right now is, what if Thornhill doesn't work out? What's their backup option at free safety? And right now, I think that's a more than valid question, because there's a lot of guys on this roster that I think could play strong safety, but not a ton that could play a good free safety. Now, the potential solution number one is just to move Jalen Ramsey to strong safety and Deshaun Elliott to free safety full-time. Now, I wouldn't love this plan, because I don't think you're using Elliott's ability as a run defender and Ramsey's ability as a slot corner, which I think is their best spots. So I wouldn't love this plan, if I'm being completely honest with you. Another potential option is Sebastian Castro, the UDFA out of Iowa, who I'm a big fan of, by the way, impresses during camp, and Deshaun Elliott and Sebastian Castro are your starting safety duo. That's certainly an option as well. But then another option that could be on the table as well is to go out and get a free agent safety as well. But another thing that begs the question here is, does Pittsburgh really feel confident in Sebastian Castro? Obviously, he went undrafted. He is a UDFA coming in here. He's an older prospect. He's not the biggest guy in the world, and he's not the most athletic guy in the world. So do you really want to put your faith in Sebastian Castro being an immediate success if Thornhill goes down with an injury? That's certainly a dubious proposition, I would say, heading into camp without more competition. But there are some more in-house options, guys, to consider. Corey Trice Jr. played a little bit of dime backer last year. I thought that was the best football he has played in his NFL career. He hasn't played a ton, but I think his best ball has come as that middle-of-the-field type of player, and he's got that physical profile that could move to safety quite well. Beanie Bishop Jr. is undersized, so he'd have to be a true deep safety, but he's got a lot of size and playmaking ability that I think the Steelers feel like could make a transition to safety. And Dante Kent's another guy that doesn't have a ton of experience playing safety, but he's got the physical profile to potentially make that move to safety. So that's another thing that the Steelers could consider heading into camp here. But then again, another potential solution is they could still add another free agent safety. There's still some good options out there, even though Jamal Adams and Blackmon got signed yesterday. Justin Simmons is still out there in free agency. He is a former All-Pro free safety. Quandre Diggs is back healthy, so he claims, but he's kind of similar to like Deshaun Elliott in terms of the athleticism. So I'm not sure if he's a true free safety. Jordan Whitehead is still out there. Marcus Williams is still out there. Aaron Rodgers' ayahuasca buddy, Jordan Poyer, is still out there. There's still some options out there for the Steelers if they want to go out and get a safety. But I do think, guys, heading into camp, if the Steelers wanted to sign a safety, they probably would have done it already. Now, they probably want to see how some of these guys perform in camp. If Thornhill isn't looking good, if Corey Trice Jr. and Beanie Bishop Jr. don't look good at safety, and it's clear and obvious they have to add a veteran, I think they will. But I think that they feel pretty decent about where they're at with the safety position right now. And then at the end of the day, guys, free safety is probably the least important position on the Steelers defense this year. The reason why the Steelers are kind of positioning themselves as like they don't really have a big need at safety right now is because they don't feel that way, right? They've got a great pass rush and a really good cornerback room, so you're going to have that rush element. You're going to have that coverage element. So your free safety's job is really to be the deepest of the deepest, not allow those big plays down the field, and that's a fairly doable job for an adequate starter like Juan Thornhill, in my opinion. And listen, guys, I think Thornhill may surprise some people, all right? The reports out of mandatory minicamp was that he was flying around. He is a phenomenal athlete, all right? I think that when he's healthy, he's a pretty decent starting free safety. That if he's your weakest link on this defense this year, I think you're feeling pretty darn good about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense heading into the 2025 season. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Should the Steelers add another safety in free agency before the start of the season? And if so, who do you want to bring in? Do you want to bring in Quandre Diggs? Do you want to bring in Justin Simmons, somebody else? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. And that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors. Type those real ones down there in the comments section if you made it to the end of today's Steelers Talk video. Later today, we will have a second video here on Steelers Talk breaking down my official roster projection for the Pittsburgh Steelers before we start training camp practices tomorrow in Latrobe. I really do appreciate all of your guys' support, so click that subscribe button if you never want to miss any of our Steelers training camp coverage.